Okay, I'm back. My phone overheated. I took it as redirection from God to move from where I was and I wasn't supposed to be going so deep into that, right? And to get back on track because it's Valentine's Day, right? This is about love and love deficits and is meant to glorify God, not a space to process my traumas, but referencing it where it makes sense, right? So the love deficit. Well, y'all, it blew up eventually. But before it blew up, so it blew up in October 2023. And before it blew up, God had me giving me signs and signals for years, honestly. But because of my love deficit and needing to prove love, I stayed in it. I kept trying to do it. And I was like, he was absolutely right when he said women don't know when to let go. Really, he was talking about me. It was a generalization. He was telling me that I needed to let go without telling me to let go. And I also believe that the same way that he asked me to be his wife to get engaged that and to then get married, I believe that it was his responsibility, his duty to say, well, I don't want this anymore. And until I didn't hear those words, I was there. But again, with that resentment, that just meant that he was also unhappy and it was showing up in his behaviors and things too. And I was just staying it in my little fantasy world. And so we're going on, we're moving on like May. Ooh, dang, it got really rough, y'all, in 2023. I thought we were about to get divorced in March. We had this big blow up. We had a big we had a big one in March 2022 before moving to New York. And that was a major financial threat was made to me then. And again, I stayed. Again, I stayed, y'all, but I understand it. So I'm not judging myself, but I'm just like looking back. I'm like, girl, wow, you were committed in the worst way. But I understand it. And so we end up going to New York and we moved in July 2022. We have this big argument in September. We have another one, I think, in like November. And of course, with the financial threats, y'all, I'm working like crazy. I took a second contract position to try to work in my job. I'm still trying to finish my dissertation, right? Because I'm not giving up on this, but I also got to take care of me. But again, because I've been programmed to one, be independent, have your own, and it's smart, as a woman to have your own things, as well. But that I had to work hard. So I'm trying to do all the things. I'm trying to be a doting wife and do all this stuff. So what really all the signs are saying nothing is going to be enough, but I refuse to because I said, well, let me try more. Let me try this, right? Before giving it up, having to justify leaving. So we had a big argument in March that I can remember. It was probably something between December and March as well, but March stood out to me. We had two big arguments in April that year. We had a big one in May where I really was like, oh, this is the end. I need to get looking at my bank account. I was looking at apartments, y'all, and ready to move back to the DMV. And I was like, okay, well, what can I afford? Or I was like, y'all know I like to travel and be about the country. I was like, you know what? I could easily go spend like a month in South Africa and like go chill and, reset my mind if that's the case. Or yeah, I was like, I'm about to go up, be out the country. Right. And we were able to work through it and we started the marriage counseling. And so this was the end. This was closer to our anniversary too. But we had started marriage counseling, but we were inconsistent. And then in between there is when we went to Thailand for like 3.5 weeks. Absolutely beautiful country, amazing people, the food. Like I just felt so good and at peace in Thailand. It was wonderful because I was spending time in nature and God's creation. But on the way back, so we didn't have any arguments when we were there, but he was very disconnected. We were in paradise and he was not happy. I was analyzing my data, right? Because I'm in Thailand, right? Trying to still finish my dissertation. So I'm analyzing my data. I'm making cute little content to post or whatever. And he's studying for this exam that he has coming up, and then going to the gym, and then just like living the life. But every day, not every day, but most days, he was like unhappy. And I, again, taking on the emotional load of the relationship, was trying to like shift energy, or I did nothing at all because I was tired of it. Because like there's no reason for him to be this way, but I also would not contribute negatively because he could be very reactive to things. And so I was like, well, I'm not gonna say something that's gonna throw the day off. And so a lot of times I kept silent to protect peace, which was also a theme in the relationship, which also is an indicator that it was not an emotionally safe space. Um, so on the way back, we have a layover in Qatar. Now, y'all know that part of the world, that is not a place to have an argument, not as two people of color, and definitely not as how I've described him in that country. We know how things can be racist or whatever. So we having an argument in the airport in Qatar, y'all, and I'm still trying to be solution oriented, but remember, he said women don't know when to let go. This man had been trying to shake me off for years, and I didn't recognize it, and he would not say it explicitly. Right. And so that's why I kept holding. I was like, well, we married. You know what I mean? Like that thing where I went too hard, I would say, with the Bible, where my needs aren't being met, his needs aren't being met. And I don't know how he felt about it, but it had started to chip away at me, and I didn't realize it. Just how much it had started to chip away at me, or how much it had chipped away at me. And we get on the plane, like we had to zip it, right? Because it's time to board the plane, because we weren't going to go on the plane because we were in an area that wasn't quite private, but people weren't right next to us. They could hear that it was getting heated, but probably couldn't hear the content. And I don't like public displays of mess. I ain't gonna lie. And I'm not one that's like down to argue. Like I'm here to talk all day, right? But it was getting very heated and emotional, and he expressed fears, and I understood, right? Like, and I was trying to be attentive to his emotional needs as well. And I had started already been working more on boundaries and doing so in the relationship than I did at the beginning when I was being dragged by grief. And we're on the airplane, and y'all, my heart's racing, my body temperature's up, like all this stuff. So I'm like, this is unhealthy. This is unhealthy. And if you knew me at that time, y'all, I was probably at least 50 to 60 pounds heavier than I am now. That's when I was wearing like a size 14. Stuff I was wearing was larger, extra large, and like I was stressed. My blood pressure was way up. My skin, awful. Like so much hyperpigmentation, the different breakouts. I was thinking it was the water with New York, but really it was my stress level went up. Even my diet changed. Like I abandoned like my healthy habits and like that I had built. And like it's not that he was unhealthy, but there were certain things that I had said I wasn't doing really anymore, like eating white rice. It was like I need to eat brown rice because that works for me. Um, just different things. And I just released these things to be in relationship. And I'm not blaming him, y'all, because something else that he would say that was so true, and that I had to take accountability for in my period of transformation with God is that you allow it. He wouldn't say it to me directly, but he would say it about other people that if you allow it, then why wouldn't a person not do it? And I operate from more of, well, it's wrong, it's hurting a person. Like why would you do it? Like I have a hard time with people who do things knowing it will hurt a person instead of just doing the right thing. But I believe it needs to be both ways. You need to have accountability for yourself and treat people kindly and with love, right? But then if someone is mistreating you, it is your responsibility to to establish a boundary, communicate it, and hold it. And so he would cross boundaries and I wouldn't set boundaries. And that's how we got further and further and further into the dysfunction. And so I'm on the plane trying to reset, regulate my breathing, doing techniques and things that I teach clients all the time. And I hear audibly, let him go. I knew what the voice was. It was God. Because I've heard God before. We talk. That's my God. He's the guy, right? And so I was like, no, because I'm all worked up, y'all. And I was like, nope, I'm going to distract. I'm going to disconnect from this moment. I'm going to reset, right? And this is what God does, y'all. God sends us messages the way that he knows we need to receive it so that it's not mistaken that it's him. And in that moment, y'all, this is how hard-headed I was. God said it to me, heard it, and I knew it was him. And I said, nope. Try to ignore God. That's wild, ain't it? So wild. So I was like, pop them headphones in. I'm going to find a movie to watch. Now, remember, I told y'all earlier how I used to love watching reality TV shows and escaping from my stuff, looking at their stuff and how bad their stuff was. So I said, I'm going to escape. And God said, I know you because you mine, you my daughter, you my child. I know exactly what you're going to do. Y'all, God hopped up in that screen, and I don't mean like a face popped up or anything like that. So I'm scrolling, looking through movies. First title I see, The Breakup. You know, the Jennifer Aniston joint. I kind of was like annoyed, right? Then I see another title that pops out. Excuse me, that pops out at me. How to Be Single. I was like, all right, now. Kind of chuckle. And then, y'all, this last one, and it's a real movie. Let Him Go. And then that's when I stopped because I shook. God stopped me in my tracks. He came through that screen. He said, you going to try to ignore me? Watch this. So he put it so that I couldn't ignore. So it had to sit me down. It forced me. And so I said, y'all, God had already told me what it is. I had just had this argument, heart pumping, blood, head thumping, like everything, right? I'm like, but God, we still like trying to finish marriage counseling and da da da. Like, I'm gonna negotiate with God when He just told me He is God, y'all. And I'm still, because that love deficit and the lack of trust, and without realizing it, right? Like the disappointments that I had in my life and not having my needs met, instead of turning to God who can fulfill my every need and will do so happily and it will be lasting, right? I was trying to make it happen on my own, trying to go to therapy to repair a thing that God has been trying to break apart. We were honestly, y'all, it took a while to say this, but we were never supposed to be married. We weren't. No doubt that we like loved each other and that this was a relationship that I hope was mutually beneficial in learning lessons and bringing out points where healing was needed. Because I know I've gotten that and I've taken the time to do that work. But excuse me. But we weren't supposed to get married. And I had done what I wanted to do because right, like it was everything. Like, how could it get better than this? He's this, that, this, and I feel this and this and this and that. But I didn't look at the things that were missing, right? Like the foundation of God, right? Like, and that didn't mean he wasn't a believer, but God was not a central part of the relationship. And so I took what I could get and waited and waited and waited for him to take the lead. And he just never did. And so as a result of that, I found myself, and then COVID happened too. I was engaging in a lot of online worship on my own, still needing to feed my spirit, knowing that I needed that because God never took his hands off of me. And wow, y'all, there's so much that happened now that I'm thinking back about all these things and redirections from God that I ignored because I chose because of my love deficits. And so when I was trying to negotiate with God, God just went silent, y'all. It was the most eloquent I said what I said moment because he said nothing, right? So that was like the first in the first week of August. And so we got back, we got settled into a new apartment. And there's so much other stuff that happened, y'all, that were like the stress levels were there, like the instability, emotional instability, and then also um creating confusion and chaos without realizing that it's happening. That was also a theme that kind of made it hard for us to be able to progress and to actually connect because there would always be something that we needed to solve or something we needed to do. There would always be this thing where we couldn't, like, be stable, be still, and then focus on the work and deepening and diving in. And I didn't put my foot down, right? So I recognized where I could have done things differently and what my role was in the breakdown of this. So God said this. I say nothing of the let him go to him because I still haven't accepted it. I'm in disbelief. We can work this out. And in these therapy sessions, y'all, I was getting dragged again, like emotionally. Like I was hearing things I had never heard before. And I was like, but he also wasn't a person to really talk to friends about what he was feeling. So I was like, well, if this is what you need to do to express so that we can get on the same playing field, sure. But maybe I was like, and I told him it was hurtful to hear these things. But also, did he want to consider doing some sessions with her? Because I don't know that it's beneficial for me to hear all of these things. I'm here in 6.5 years, 6 years of all the things that I've done wrong and how I've been an awful wife and partner and all these things to him. Um, and it took up the time in the sessions where it made it actually hard for us to make progress, right? So anyway, we finally get to a point. It's the last Friday in September where we are feeling like we got this. We can do this on our own going forward. And so we excuse me. So we get some tools, some resources, and like we can carry it on our own, right? Because we both Howard prepared scholars. So we know how to do homework. We know how to read. We know how to discuss. We know how to reflect and come up with new, you know, ideas as a result of it. And we had started doing this thing with where we rotated each month. One of us planning a date. Was it monthly, weekly? Anyway, but we were just trying to facilitate more connection. And this was something that of course, I suggested because I was still trying to save it. And this was his Sunday, he picked the Sunday. This was his time to choose. And so we had a pretty good day. Like we went and checked out a museum. We found ourselves down in more of like the artsy part of New York where Juilliard is and like the ballet and all of that. And I had been over into that part of it. Yes. So I was just really getting excited. And in the past, we had done like when we lived in the DC area, we would like go to the Kennedy Center for a holiday show. And I was like, ooh, maybe we could do like a show. We could pick one like the opera, the ballet, like one of these things. Y'all know I like culture. I'm a little bougie. I'm down with the bougie. And so it was just like exciting, like that, seeing these other things that New York had to offer. And it wasn't something I was watching on TV. It was my real life. I was living in New York City and we got ice cream and all these things. And so we had this there was this restaurant that we love to go to, the Panorama Room. If you're in New York, go check it out. It's beautiful. Like you get the best views of New York. This is like my favorite place to be. Because it's on Roosevelt Island and it's surrounded by water, y'all. And I didn't realize how much I love being around water. But I also grew up in the Midwest on Lake Michigan, but I didn't spend that much time there. But with adulthood, I've learned to appreciate it so much more. So like this is one of my favorite places. Like one side, you can see, man, it's just beautiful. You can see Queens, you can see Manhattan. It's just beautiful. And so I was like, well, do you want to stop in there for a nightcap? Right. And so because it's more of a tourist place and not a lot of people live on Roosevelt Island like that, um, we, the bartenders and stuff will recognize us. And so we hope that someone we know is in there because they make really great cocktails and stuff, right? So we're in there and one of our bartenders, she was there and she took care of us. And so we're having like we're having a good time, and then we're like, okay, well, it's time to head home, right? Because I had put a plan together for finishing my doctorate and like preparing for licensure and get my plan together to start my own practice, like all these things. So I was like, I gotta get structured. So I was like, okay, well, we can head home. So it was such a good day to me, y'all. And we were on the elevator. We had just got, we're walking off the elevator on our floor. We lived in the in unit in the building. And so I was just like saying how I felt hope, y'all, because like I said, it was getting hard. There was a point even in September where I was like, I don't know if we're gonna make it, y'all. And I confided in one of my friends about it, but then I was like, I think we had a talk that's reassuring or whatever. And so I was feeling hopeful because like I said, there were other things that were related to finances and employment and things like that that had come up. And I had made a comment that I'm like, I'm glad that we're like working through this. And I said, because anybody else would have been hounding you. Y'all, that one word, he stuck on it. He stuck on it. Hounding me. What would you need to hound me for? And then he starts going off. I guess he felt attacked. Again, I thought it was a safe space to talk, but clearly it wasn't. And I was highlighting we're making it through this rough transitional period. And next thing I know, there's a whole blow up argument that's happening. And it goes on till the wee hours of the morning. And then finally, I was like, I have to go to bed because I have to get up because I still had to get up, see my clients, work on my, writing up my results from my data and everything. And we had recently started to incorporate nightly prayers, right? Because again, like I said, I was trying not to overstep things that I believed were like the man's role to be the lead in certain things. And so we would rotate who would pray. And this was my night to pray. And I prayed the most heartfelt and petty prayer ever. But at the conclusion, even still of the argument, when I decided to disengage, it came up about like it was a question of faith and provision. And I said to him so boldly, y'all, I let him know God got me. God always had me. And I'm just like, wow. And then proceeded to pray. And then the next morning, because I was like, yo, this is going to be a rough road because I still hadn't got it right. I still wasn't letting go, y'all. Because I was like, I'm locked in. We married. So I I get up. I did not get as much sleep as I did, but I had wanted to. But I got up, got dressed, got my matcha, y'all, because I can't live without my matcha. And I was just getting started at incorporating like bee pollen, for all the wellness benefits, and packed my lunch and all the stuff, and I'm ready to go. My bag was packed to go down to the work area because the apartment complex we were living in, it had a lot of co-working like type space, or you can get the private office. I used to try to get down there early so I could be like in a conference room and have privacy. Um, so I'm getting my things together and he starts up again, y'all. And at this point, he up the ante. He's telling me how he wants to go down to the leasing office to see about terminating the lease, getting out the lease. Now, I told y'all he speaks passive aggressive. He won't say what he really want to say as much as he spoke in action items sometimes. So like I said, y'all, I have been doing my work Okay, your girl's doing her work. And so I said, well, what are you saying? Because that can mean a lot of things. Are you saying you want to leave here and then we go move somewhere that's more affordable? Are you talking about separation? Are you talking about divorce? What are you talking about? Right? Because I could clearly tell that this was a statement that was meant to destabilize me emotionally. And I wholeheartedly believe that he was disturbed that I could even sleep that night and that I got up functioning, ready to continue to do what I had set out to do. And so, because he didn't even sleep in a bed with me that night. Also, that was never mind. So I said, okay, because he had started launching into this whole thing and verbally or whatever. And I was so calm, y'all. This ain't nothing but God. I was so calm and I said, okay. And I go into the bedroom and I grab my bag, which was packed with my laptop and all my things. And I said, well, we can go right now. Oh, no, 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 no. I called him out. I called him out. I said, you know, I have work to do today. And he was like, well, when do you have time in your schedule? So I look at my schedule because I blocked off time for dissertation. And I have my client appointment set up. And I said, well, I'm supposed to be working on dissertation stuff right now, but I was like, we can go right now. But again, it felt like sabotage. I had laid out a clear plan for him for what I wanted to do, to go to the next level so that we could really live the life. Because I didn't feel like we were really living our true life yet, right? Because we met as students, we were meeting in a transitional period. We met in a grind period and a hustle period. And so there were certain things that I was like, okay, this needs to happen. So if he was working later because he was trying to get things done, I allowed it. I didn't trip. I wasn't calling him. When you coming home? Da 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 da. There were a lot of times where I cooked and he came home when he came home, right? Like I didn't know. Even his sister was like, "You don't know when he coming home?" Like, and I was like, "No, I don't," because I was giving him that freedom, that was giving him that trust to do what he needed to do. But also, y'all, that could have been some manipulation, right? Because then it's like, oh, you don't believe in me. Why are you interfering with my work? That sort of thing. So, some of my friends have asked me, do I ever believe that he cheated? And I said, well, I had no evidence to support that. But I was like, maybe. I was like, but it don't matter because we ain't together though. But getting back on track. So I said I was so calm, y'all. I remember I took a deep breath and I was like, all right. I said, well, I said it so calm. And I'm like, God, you were so good because how I had that and it did not send me spiraling. Because again, y'all, remember, I had a history of abandonment, right? He knows this. He knew this. And I've even told him before where I felt like he was trying to take my vulnerabilities and use them as ammunition with me in the past. I said, like, I'm a person that has a history of abandonment. You saying this is not healthy for me. Like, this is good for me. Like, you cannot do those things. So he just found other ways to do it, y'all. That was more covert. And so this I feel like was one of those moments where he was trying to trigger my normal reconciliation response when he's like, well, let's go downstairs. Because he knew what he said and done was so awful that he wouldn't even want to be with himself anymore, is what I believe, right? And instead of me going like, no, let's work it out, let's go to therapy, let's schedule another session with her, blah, 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 blah. Nope. God didn't even allow it. It didn't even occur to me as a thought to reconcile as much as I said, I'm tired for fighting for this when all you want to do is fight me. Ain't expect that thing at all, y'all. It set him further because he wasn't even ready to do what he said. This was very calculated. It was very manipulative. And he was sitting on the couch in boxers. That's it. He didn't have no socks on his feet. And he jumps up and he's yelling and hurling insults and doing all this stuff. And he's got to hurry up and throw on clothes now because this is not how he expected it to go. He expected me to run the women don't know when to let go programming. Okay. That's what he was expecting. Okay. And I had enough. I had reached my limits and I wasn't even trying to call his bluff. Like, yo, I was exhausted because I had been dragged by grief, had come out of that. And then I was getting dragged in my relationship, trying to compensate. And it wasn't even appropriate because I had not cheated this man out of anything. I was just trying to do the best that I could with the lived experiences that I was having and trying to do it on my own and without God. Okay. So I got dragged. And whoo, y'all, it's a lot. And I'm looking so much that I'm like leaving out. So I calmly, like, I leaving out of the apartment. He's still yelling. I told y'all we live in the corner unit. He's generally like a chill dude, but when he's upset, that voice is big and booming. He's not having any concern or consideration for neighbors. And it's like 8, 9 in the morning and people are home because like there's a combination of people that work from home. Like he's yelling the whole time and I'm telling him, yo, chill. You need to bring it down. Like trying to encourage him to gain control of the situation. I'm not matching his yelling, right? And, that makes me think of that. I don't know where I heard it, but they just said like when a person sees two people arguing, like from across the street, it's hard to tell who's crazy because they're showing up the same way. And I'm not a person who believes that I have to show up that same way as to not look weak. I'm going to act composed and I'm going to stay in character. And sometimes my character can be too chill. Sometimes I do need to turn up because even Jesus turned up. Okay. He was flipping tables in the temple. Notes taken. Okay. So he's fussing the whole way we go down the elevator. He's fuss. He was fussing until we got in that leasing office. He was so upset. He couldn't even say what needed to be said. So again, I took the lead, right? Because I was more emotionally regulated. And I told her we need to know what our options are for breaking the lease. And she was shook because he made sure we got into this place, like was trying to make it happen and trying to do what he needed to do to make it happen. He was good at making things happen, but like it could be forceful and sometimes, uncomfortable. If you were on the receiving end of what he was trying to make happen and you were like in his way. But excuse me. So we get the information that we need. And she was like, well, what happened? Right? Because she was like, y'all want us to live here so bad. Y'all so pressed to live here. And now you telling me y'all ain't even been here 2 months and y'all ready to go? So yeah, this is what I forgot to tell y'all. This is like 2 months after the let him go. And I asked God, let us finish the marriage counseling. Y'all, this thing is less than 48. We're in the office. It's 48 hours after this blows, less than 48 hours after when this blows up. Our last session was Friday evening. The blow up started late Sunday night. Got it? Got it. Cool. So, oh man. So she's confused and she's like, well, what happened? Is there anything we can do? She's trying to get the feedback. I said, it ain't y'all. It's us. Thank you. And so we both leave out and we go in separate directions. I go upstairs to the area so that I can work. And y'all, I'm composed and I still just can't believe what's happening. And I sat there and I was like, and never in the history of the relationship was I the one to send angry text messages in between. And so I would just like wait to talk, or sometimes I would process it when I wouldn't express things sometimes because again, I was like, ooh, I don't want to have an argument, or I used to have to find ways that were palatable, digestible, indirect, to communicate things to him. And I could see that he would receive it because I would see changes in his behaviors. And so that was an adaptation that I made instead of just being direct and be my true self and take up the appropriate amount of space. Um, I would tiptoe. I tiptoed a lot. I tiptoed a lot. And I held on to a lot or just processed it and let it go. But again, that goes back to my program and don't nobody care about your feelings like that experience or if it was like actually said to me, right? So it's really setting in what's happening. And I'm so just torn apart. And I send a text and I'm like, if you want to break this lease, you will pay. I'm not paying for this because you introduced this, not me. And I said, I feel like you are trying to sabotage me financially and academically. So I'm proud of myself because I expressed it concisely and wasn't engaging in argument. But y'all, this was a power thing for him because his response was fine. I'll pay it. Now, mind you, both our names are on this lease. Both of our financial information was needed to qualify for this because in the state of New York, you have to make 440 times. I was going to say 400, y'all, but it's wild. But you have to make 40 times the amount of your rent or something like that to even be qualified. So you might have enough money to pay for it. And I don't know the history of this, but it's also very discriminatory. But it's not like he did it on his own. It's not like I didn't sign the lease or whatever. But when we moved in, the plan was that he would pay the rent, right? As a good husband should, covering his wife, being a provider, right? Um, and he says to me, well, that's fine, I'll pay it. But if you're not paying to break the lease or helping to pay rent, you can't stay here. Y'all. What? Financial threat again. And I'm like, I'm leaving then. I'm leaving then because I recognized what was happening, even though I didn't want to recognize what was happening. The employment situation was directly impacting his finances. And instead of him, like coming to me in a way to ask me to help, because he did ask me to help before, and it was kind of unplanned. And I was like, wow, we just came back from Thailand. I wasn't working the way I normally worked. But if this is gonna be the difference between us being able to pay our rent or not, I'm gonna roll up my sleeve, right? That's that hyper independence. Let's get it done, having to hustle. Um, and so I was like, okay, I would. So I agreed to help. And without getting too far into the weeds, that was a big part of the breakdown and the blow up finances and the pressure of it. And so I then activated my sister circle and went to a hotel that night with the dogs. And yeah, I was back in Maryland by Wednesday. So this was a Monday. I stayed at a hotel Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. One of my Howard sisters, she drove up overnight. I'll never forget that. She drove up overnight to pick me up at 7 something in the morning to bring me back. And I told her on that drive down, I said, he's not going to come looking for me. And she couldn't believe it, right? It was saying all these things. And I was like, no. Like in my heart of hearts, I knew it was over, right? So I'm now at this point staying in, like I said, in my Howard sisters' basement. You know, I had my own room, my own bathroom, all of that stuff, all living area. So if I didn't want to talk to people, I didn't have to talk to people. And it was, she gave a safe space for me and my dogs, y'all. Like I was completely displaced, not knowing what was going to happen next. But God had told me to let him go. And I had tried, I didn't listen the first time. So God had to blow it up to make me uncomfortable to leave and to also make it so that I would not come back. And there were a couple times, like this, y'all getting too far into the weeds for today. Mm. So We were never able to reconcile. And in the state of Maryland, you can do an uncontested divorce where if both parties agree, you don't have to do a year separation. You could do it with 6 month separation. So I left October. That meant by April, we could file the paperwork. That's what happened, y'all. That's the short version of what happened. But during that time when I left from October to the beginning of July, I was wondering, just wandering, not wondering, wandering, turned into anything but God. Not too far left. I didn't get too crazy with it, but it was crazy for me. And I was maladaptive coping. I was isolated. I just felt awful. I was exhausted so many days, but yet and still, I always had the mind and the ability to still show up and do my job. Another indicator that I was working in purpose because I should have been shut down. I was also operating in survival mode. Dang, y'all. This bad. I feel bad saying it. But this is my reality. So as a result of the employment situation, we both were without insurance. And so he eventually got into a new job, but he was dragging his feet with submitting the insurance paperwork. Now, you all might think that's harmless, but I knew his history. And with his ex-wife, who engaged in infidelity from what he shared with me, which was why that marriage ultimately ended. Once he decided that they were moving forward with divorce and he no longer wanted to be in the marriage, one of the things he did is he went to HR and asked about taking her off of his insurance so he didn't have to pay for her anymore. But you can't do that, right? So because we have been in such a contentious space, I know him well enough to know that that was a strategy, but he had also disclosed at the marriage counseling that he had put a 1 year clock on us. And if we weren't, and I don't think he would make it, he thought we would make it the year. Or if we didn't make it the year, he didn't want to be carrying that resentment of having to keep me on insurance the same way he did with his first wife. I think he dragged his feet on purpose. He asked me to remind him, why I got to remind you to do insurance, something that benefits you too. Okay. And so I was operating without insurance, y'all. Like I said, y'all, my blood pressure was up. So that meant I was paying out of pocket for my medication because the insurance had ended from the previous job and there was nothing new in place. And like I said, I was overweight. I had returned to eating in ways that were not healthy for me. And I was stressed. Cortisol levels was probably through the roof if they were, measured. So I wasn't healthy. I wasn't healthy. And that also meant I couldn't go to therapy to get support through this incredibly wild transition, y'all. Like, a dissertation is enough to take you up. Oh, y'all, I just skipped over the fact that I dissertated under duress and all of this. There were, I successfully defended, hence Evolve with Dr. J. Right. And that wasn't nothing but God and how I made it through that. Like, y'all, for real. Like, when I look back and like the people that God had around me and my advisor, who was also the dean. So, that was also another big area which I had to perform. But I was trying to carry it on my own, y'all. And I had to break down and just call her. This is like, I have like a month left and this is it, right? Like, it's show or no go. Like, I had to do it or not. And there was no time left for extensions or anything like that academically. So When I tell you she went to solution mode, she's like, this the plan, this is we gonna do, blah, 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 blah. Help get me together, y'all. But like I said, I'm turning to things and people instead of God. And I was getting dragged again, y'all, because I was trying to do it all on my own. That's the hyper independence coming up and me projecting my earthly attachment and allowing it to show up in my spiritual attachment with God. And I'm going to do a whole separate thing on that later, right? Where I have to do it for me because they're not going to be there. I got to make it happen. And baby, God don't need our help. I was supposed to be calling on him. And so, y'all, it was one day in June, and my minister loved him to life. He is like a godfather to me. Like him and his wife, I call them, like Big Mom and Big Dad. If y'all know who they are, y'all know who I'm talking about. And, he would always check on me, even in New York. We even tried to do our premarital counseling with him. It worked. He a licensed psychologist. I tried to make it work. I should have let him do his job. He was skilled to deal with the behaviors that were present. And, you know, and I tried to protect him. And I did us both a disservice because that was an opportunity for growth for both of us. But I think I knew that it wasn't supposed to be. I mean, we weren't supposed to be getting married, but I had decided that that's what it was and that's what it was going to be. And I was also trying to keep peace. So with that, man, it's so rich, y'all. So much stuff happened. So much stuff happened. Um, but he would always check on me and reach out and be available. Like if I needed somebody like with good, solid, like biblical, but also like clinical advice to just like kind of like coach me, but it's not like a session, but like making sure that I was okay and checking on me. And boys, hey, my dog's getting excited. Go sit down. Go. Excuse me. So, like I was saying, he would always check on me or whatever. And so he always left the open door because he knew I worked from home. And he's like, baby girl, if you ever want to like change it up, there's space at the church. You can come. The room is available to you whenever you want it. So this was one morning I woke up, y'all. My spirit was off. I just felt so low. I was just exhausted. And the person who came to mind was him. And so I called, like, hey, are you at the church? Does that offer stand for me to still come work out of the church? Now, y'all, this was a Wednesday. I ain't even thinking about the fact that it's Wednesday and Bible study or none of that, right? Because I'm back. I hadn't been to that church. I had visited the church in Baltimore a couple times, but I wasn't going to church in person regularly, even though I had the means. God had provided me the opportunity to get a car because I didn't have a car anymore. I sold my car in New York because what I need a car for in New York, and especially the way parking costs like $500 a month is crazy, plus insurance, then plus the car payment, it didn't even make sense. So, I was able to get rid of my car. And so I'm coming back here in the area where you can get around, but you kind of needed a car. Um, so at any rate, God blessed me with this, and I'm not even using it to go be in the house of the Lord and showing gratitude for it. But this day, and like I go, and he's like, "Yeah, come on, come, baby girl." And so the reason why I bring this up and connect and get back to the insurance. So at the beginning of the year, as soon as my plan kicked in, because I'm paying out of pocket, I had to go to Maryland Health Connections and find me a plan, y'all. The social worker and me went to work for myself. And so as soon as that plan was active, I started looking for therapists. And so I sent out a few emails, you know what I mean, to try to connect. And one person, she responded immediately and she got me scheduled right away. Our sessions were for Fridays. I had a recurring on Fridays. unless like she had to travel or I was traveling or something, you know what I mean, where it didn't work. And so on this day, I had my session, not even thinking about it. And so I am in this session, y'all. I told you I was just feeling the way. I was tired. And this whole session, y'all, I'm crying. I finally break down and I said to her, and I remember it, I said, I am tired. I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm tired. I said, I used to pride myself on being able to make it through anything, being able to survive. And I said, I'm tired of surviving. I am ready to thrive. Like I'm tired, y'all. And I can still feel that pain and I can see myself in that moment. And that's why my eyes are just, you know, getting teary because that was the moment, y'all. I didn't even know that I was crying out to God. I was in the house of the Lord crying out to God that I was tired, that I had enough of trying to do it on my own. And that night, you know, I went into Bible study. I felt a little bit out of place. I felt embarrassed. I felt ashamed. Like people knew I had been gone for so long. People knew I was married. So they probably want to know where's this man. And I wasn't wearing my rings. Like I had taken them off because I was like, this is done. And like, I was like, the only reason why I'm still even in this is because of the legal aspect of it. Right. So like, if we had never gotten married, it just would have been a clean break of a breakup. But I was like, that is done. And God had already told me to let him go. So I was like, and there was no going back. And when there were attempts and where my heart softened, God hardened his heart and made him rise up almost like Pharaoh did with the children of Israel to not make it possible because God did not want me to stay. God was trying to free me from bondage, y'all. I was in bondage and I was about to willingly go back. Okay. Man, God had given me freedom and I was about to go back because it was comfortable. Just like the children of Israel, y'all, when they were out there in the woods with Moses and they didn't have food and like, you know, God gave them manna from heaven, but that still wasn't enough. They're like, well, in Egypt, we had meats, we had this, we had that, but y'all was in bondage. God freed y'all. God had given them a promise. A promised land. He had promised these things to them. And they were walking, y'all. Their feet didn't swell. Their clothes never wore out. They never actually went hungry in these 40 years of wandering, right? Because I was wandering too. It wasn't 40 years, but maybe if I did the math, because back then, biblically, they lived different, okay? They was living way longer than us. So I guess these 6 months, not even I guess, I know these 6 months was part of me wandering. No, that wasn't even it. That was the start of it in June. That was the start of my wilderness walk. Come on, God, giving me perspective. So this was when I had surrendered, y'all, but like he wouldn't let me go back because there were attempts where he was trying to pull me back in, and God knows me so well that in August, I stumbled across an email. Well, like before I say that, the divorce and everything was finalized in July, 2024. And so he had made another attempt in March, but God completely protected me from it. And so what I didn't tell y'all is when I left, I had only packed 3 days worth of clothes, some dog food for the dogs, their dog bed, and toiletries, right? But not even everything. Like I left my makeup. Y'all, I love some Korean skincare. I didn't even have all my stuff with me because I was just like, I'll just be gone for a couple of days. But also I was just trying to get out of there because I no longer felt safe emotionally there. I just couldn't. I had to go. I had to separate myself. Um, and my nervous system couldn't take anymore. It really couldn't take anymore. So when my Howard sis picked me up, I just had the duffel bag. of stuff, and then I put like the dog stuff in a suitcase, and that's what I had. So I had a carry-on bag. Well, I had one suitcase and a duffel bag. I don't even remember which bag it was that I had, but it was probably carry-on. I don't even know, y'all. It was a mess. I just had the vision of myself walking to the hotel with dogs, with a duffel. Yeah, I had the dogs in one hand, my suitcase and duffel bag in another. I might have had my backpack that my laptop was in. And I remember this dude saw me. He was like, "Do you need help?" And at that point, y'all, I was so distrusting and I didn't have the capacity to engage anybody. I was like, I don't, if this go left, I don't even have time. I couldn't even accept the help you. It was like that serious. And I walked that walk down to the hotel. I did it, and but it's like I had to apologize to myself, y'all, because even that, I was like, there's no reason why you should have to go through that. I apologize to myself for that because I had betrayed myself to be in a relationship, to be in a marriage. That love deficit was that deep that I was willing to walk away from God, my church family. I was willing to move out of state to a state where there was no plan, that where there wasn't anything necessarily for me. The God didn't tell me. I didn't draw a boundary to say, no, I'm not going. No, we not going. I didn't do any of those things. And I also think in my heart of hearts, y'all, I didn't want him to say, I'm choosing a job over you. So I knew he would. I knew he would, y'all. I knew he would. But I had that surrender moment. And with the exception of traveling out of state, I've been in church or being sick. I've been at church every Sunday and Wednesday. And even on those days when I was sick, I would watch online. I was out of the country. I was in Ghana. I went and worshiped in Ghana. Okay. God said, I'm never losing sight of God because I didn't done the hokey pokey way too many times and that I'm locked in. But y'all, once I had that surrender moment and was going to church regularly, y'all, I got with my minister and I said, this transformation was going on in me and I could feel it. And like I was talking to God more and he was just revealing things to me, y'all. And mm, mm, mm. We did this series. Oh, and this is the alignment. This is how I know it was my time for God to bring me back into alignment, that he was really calling me home. And once I surrendered, like God said, bet I got you. And every sermon, every week, when I tell you it aligned with my life, I had either just lived it or then in the week coming up, I started to go ahead and it would show up. It would happen. And I saw the alignment. I saw God working. I was seeing signs in nature. I'm out here walking, running. And if been following me, you saw that, I uploaded all my old footage before I started the channel, of me just being out in nature and everything. And like, you can see my transformation. You can absolutely see my transformation. And I went from like a size 14 down to a size 6. So from largest and extra largest to small. God had gave me a vision of how I would look with my hair, that I would look completely different by December, before the end of the year. And I literally took that the end of the year. And then one day it was just like, girl, you don't have to wait. But saying all that to say, y'all, God has transformed me, and my love deficits had me operating out of desperation, operating in straight up desperation, y'all. And I was willing to do almost anything. I lost sight of myself. I was disconnected from my community. I was, somewhat disconnected from my family. I was willing to sacrifice everything to experience love, when the love that I truly needed was the love of my Heavenly Father, the love that is the most sufficient, the love that nothing on this earth compares to. And, I was not living a soft life. I had never experienced living a soft life, y'all. because, I gave y'all rough circumstances, like the overview, right? What happened with my parents, but I was raised by my great aunt. Me and my brother, we even spent the stint of time in foster care, and my sister ended up in the care of like friends before she also ended up in the care of family permanently. And so I never lived soft life. And I didn't have a soft life in my marriage either. I had already been conditioned. I felt like I had to earn my keep. Again, there's that earning thing again, right? But here's the beauty of God's love. You don't have to earn it. He already gave his only son for us. He had Jesus come down here and occupy human form, y'all, as an expression of love, as salvation, so that we didn't have to struggle, y'all, that we always had access. And I had never tapped in, even though I knew God had been with me. And there were many times where there were certain things that would happen that I knew these things were true, where I would get these chill bumps. And that's how I knew. Yeah, it was intuition, but it took me a while to really realize it was the Holy Spirit, y'all. It was the Holy Spirit giving consent. It was the Holy Spirit co-signing. It was the Holy Spirit giving confirmation that this was the way to go, that this was the thing to do. So even when I wasn't consulting God, he still found a way to show up to tell me what I was doing was right. And to be in tune with. And that's also something that my dad told me when I was going through this stuff. He said, baby girl, well, it was a couple things, right? Like, cause again, I was a clinician. He said, never forget your skills, never forget your education and what you know, what you learn. But telling me that you know what you know, what you know. And, he's a part of repairing my attachment blueprint. He really is. And also leveling up my spiritual attachment with God, right? Because God has been using him as a vessel, where I could experience God's love and experience safety. And he's always been there. He's always been there. And I knew that I could always call on him. And so I'm grateful for that. And for him being a safe space, a safe man to really exhibit God's love, like the character of Jesus. And for McMom, like, just like also holding that space. And because I've been in spaces where women weren't comfortable with me, and that's never been my experience. Like me, just my presence will have people shook. But I also know that's God on me, right? That's their stuff. And so I had a history of shrinking. I had to shrink to survive in the past. No more, no more. But y'all, like when I tell you that God has transformed me, I've gotten into alignment with God, and I have finally, y'all, it's Valentine's Day. Like I said, I started this out saying this is my first Valentine's Day post divorce. And y'all, it's the best Valentine's Day. You want to know why? Because I'm a child of God. I'm a daughter of the King. I am loved. Y'all, I've experienced a love that I have never experienced in my life. It's a love I didn't have to earn, but it's a love that I'm happy to work to maintain and trying not to repeat. I think it's like the people of Galatia where they fell into the old ways of trying to earn, like, God's love. But I do my part and I show up and I stay in community with, my church family. I stay in community with people who feel good. During this time, y'all, I shifted so many beliefs. I welcomed God in to ask him to show me where these deficits were. Show me, because I understood as a clinician, right, that what shows up in our life, and my therapist, we talked about this too. What's in our life is a mirror to whatever we're putting out is what we get back, right? So it's just like what you give, you receive. Like that means you, excuse me, you can take that in so many ways. But really, like what you're putting out is what you get. And so what's showing up in your life is a reflection of something eternal. And it's so real. And so I was in community with, this is not everybody, right? But I was in community with people who, one, had characteristics and behaviors that were unhealthy that um reinforced that earning of love and friendship and relationships. Some of those toxic behaviors that I was experiencing and me reinforcing by not having boundaries in that relationship. I saw starting to see it in the friendships. And y'all, I also had to change my perspective because I had to ask God, allow me to see people as they are, allow me to hear things as they are, because uh defense mechanism that was automatic is that I could be very literal, and it protected me from reading implications. But it had got to the point, even in my marriage, where I wasn't hearing what was being said to me. I wasn't hearing what was being communicated to me. And that was a safeguard. God had bubble wrapped me. It's what I'll say. God had bubble wrapped me as a kid, because if I could hear and understand what was really happening, that would have blown my light out like a candle. Or it would have just like cut my power supply. Wires just gone. And I would have gone to the darkness, and the devil would have completely had his way with me. But God knew I needed to be bubbled to make it through everything that I went through. And y'all, it's just really setting in, but like where it was almost naivete. And I remember my brother even telling me in college, like, Jeannie, everybody is not as nice as you. And I had a hard time with that. And I continued to be in friendships and relationships with people who were not as nice as me. And I also didn't necessarily seek out people who maybe were as nice with me, because y'all, I was used to being around people that weren't as nice as me. And I'll have to break this down another time, in how I was born of Mary, but because everything that I was around, I had taken on the ways of Martha. And so I had to like rehab my way back to Mary. That's what my transformation is about. So I guess that talk is coming next. Um, Man, this is so good, God. And everything is for his glory, y'all. Like, and I know he took me through all of this because I know there are people that are out here that are hurting and they just want to be loved. And I just want to tell y'all that the idea is for this to like bless anybody, to help people feel seen, heard, understood, and valued, to get the support that they need. I think too, like me being a clinician and living through this, that this has given me lived experiences to be able to connect with my clinical and my social work education, to be able to help people to be in healthy relationships, healthy friendships. And I was my ultimate case study. I lived it, recovered from it, and I'm here to share this and to give you tools to help you thrive and find the love and healthy relationships that you deserve and desire.